Now then guys, so in this video I'm going to go through some of my favourite pancake exercises. Now a pancake's a really important position, especially for things like gymnastics and if you're doing any sort of martial arts with really high kicks. So essentially what I'm going to do here is try and show you the exercises that I find most beneficial to develop a strong and stable pancake position to work from with these different exercises. So first of all, I'm not going to cover any isometrics, although I do feel that they definitely have a place with pancake related training, especially in the early stages. So things like, you know, static stretches of the hamstring, of the inner hips with stretches like frog stretch or like wall straddle stretch or something like that are great. And then you can start to introduce things like PNF. Some people know it as like contract lengthen, or even Pales rails can also be known as, where you're basically contracting in your end range to try and close it off, but you've got like an object to resist you, and then you're trying to actively lengthen and pull into a deeper stretch. You know, they're not included, but I'm not saying that they shouldn't be included. They are fantastic, especially in the early stages, for you to get used to the position and just adapt yourself to the demanding range of motion that pancake causes. Also, another thing to mention is the lifestyle factors involved as well. So if you're doing loads of sort of bodybuilding related work for your legs, or if you're doing a lot of maybe football or rugby or sports with a lot of change direction, you're probably going to get quite tight in your groin. So just bear in mind that they're going to have an influence on your pancake training. I actually know one guy who got rid of all his furniture in his house so that he could improve his flexibility in his hips, and it seemed to work, so maybe that's something worth considering. Anyway, the pancake itself, what's important to do in terms of the position is we want our legs to be at about wingspan. Okay, so if we put our arms out to the side, where our middle fingers are, that should be roughly where the kind of center of the foot is in the pancake position. Okay, from there the legs want to be straight, the knees want to be facing the sky, toes want to be pointed if you're doing gymnastics, where you can pull your toes up if you're more into, I think, something like karate. But from there the knees and the feet, they should be facing the sky, so we're externally rotating them hips. Okay, from there, as you start to hinge forwards, it's important that you actually hinge from the hips. So as you're hinging forward, your pelvis should go into a little bit of anterior pelvic tilt. Okay, so what it'll look like, as you can see in the videos, is that you're basically doing a deadlift or an RDL from that pancake position. If you really struggle to do that in the early stages, that's where you can start to have like a elevation, so you can sit on something a bit taller, and that can just, for now, for the time being, help you to actually get into the proper pelvic and trunk position for a pancake. From there, it's also important that you're not rounding your upper back as well. And again, you're trying to keep that nice, relatively neutral spine that you're hinging from, that you're able to hinge yourself from the hips, as opposed to just sort of stooping forwards. And that will appear that you've got really far in the pancake, you're really far forwards, but actually it might just be that you're flexing from your spine. Okay, so let's get into the exercises now. So the first one is plate reaches. And there you can see with the plate, I'm using about a 5 kilogram here, but obviously you can go lighter and then progress to going heavier over time. But here I'm reaching forwards into that position. Okay, that's causing a nice co-contraction around the full trunk area. Okay, and that helps to keep my trunk nice and stiff, helps keep that pelvis in that nice, slightly anterior position. And it also helps to really strengthen the legs in that position. So you'll feel your hamstrings, you'll feel your inner thigh, like your adductors. And you'll also feel that activation as you reach into the outer hip as well, the abductors. Yeah, so it's a really nice movement. Essentially, what we're looking for with this one is reaching towards that left leg. That will get more into the hamstrings and sort of trunk in that outer range. Then reaching forwards and then reaching for the opposite leg, for the right leg. And as you do this, obviously you can progress the amount that you reach, but try to only reach as far as that trunk position will allow. By having the weight, it will force you to keep quite a good position, because you don't want to lose that position under load. Your body just naturally won't want to do that, so it's quite a nice constraint to add. But just obviously be mindful of the fact that if you are really stooping forwards, then you're probably not getting the benefits of the exercise. And then from there, guys, just as said before, you can always bring your bum up, and that will allow you to perform the exercise even if you can't quite sit on the floor in the pancake yet, and then over time you can progressively drop that down. Okay, in terms of reps for this one, I would suggest between 9 to maybe 21. So that would mean, if you're doing 9, that would mean 3 in each position. If you're doing 21, that would mean, what would it be? 7 in each position. Okay, so that's what I suggest in terms of reps. You could perform that for sort of between 2 and 5 sets, and I'd probably only be doing this one once or twice a week because it is quite stressful, quite demanding on the body. That's the first one, guys. Really like that one for building strength in that pancake position and simultaneously getting that co-contraction around the trunk area as well. So second up, we've got a weighted straddle stretch. Now this one comes with a caveat in terms of not using too much weight, in my opinion. I do know that the Jefferson curl, which is pretty much the same movement but with more emphasis on spinal flexion and then articulation and extension as you come up, that one people will talk about going, you want to build it towards a bodyweight Jefferson curl. For me, I don't personally see the value in that. I think loading the spine in full flexion is probably not a great idea. It's certainly up for debate. But for me, this one, I load it here with about 12 kilograms on each hand, so 24, which is, you know, not even, it's like a quarter body weight or a third body weight, slightly more, slightly less. But you don't need to go particularly heavy here. For me, I just say go heavy enough that you're feeling a good stretch, but light enough that you feel in full control throughout the movement. And from there, this one's more of a focus on the posterior chain length, but also building strength in that length. So as you're reaching yourself down, okay, you are allowing a little bit of flexion to occur in the lower back, but you're not emphasizing that. You're just trying to let them dumbbells really reach you down, but you're staying active. So you should feel at all points like if you needed to, you could pull them straight back up. Okay, so it's not just like you're sort of hanging out there and just completely relaxing through the trunk. And you are trying to stay quite active and actively actually pull yourself down towards the floor. What you should then feel is really lighten up the hamstrings, maybe a little bit into the inner groin as well, into the adductors as well. And what you can do also is you can play with having your legs closer together to target more of the hamstrings, or further apart to target more the adductor area, okay, so the inner thighs. So really good one. You're strengthening your range of motion strengthening through a full range of motion, so it is a good one. But because you are in such an excessive range of motion, you'll probably feel it right high up into the hamstring, so it'll be more close to the tendon than actually to the muscle belly itself, like you might feel in like an RDL or some sort of hamstring curl. Okay, so it might feel really high up in that hamstring, and that's fine. That's because you're working at such a large range of motion. The next one is our straddle lifts. So I like to perform these ones with something behind me in order to make sure that I'm not cheating by just leaning backwards, okay, because then I will be going into less hip flexion and I wouldn't really be challenging that. A second thing I like to do is add some sort of constraint to lift over. So here you can see I'm lifting over the plates, but from here what we're trying to do is we're trying to lift up and over the plates and then all the way back in. Okay, here, as I said, it's important to have something behind you and not to touch that. I also like to hold on to something, like you can see the dumbbell here, and that gives me some leverage. Ideally, it'd be something that's really solid and stable, not like the dumbbell, something heavier that you can really leverage on and lock into the position. So you're not cheating, you're not leaning back, you're not really excessively flexing that trunk, so that you can actually like pull down on to create tension through the trunk. And then from there, all we're doing, legs straight, toes pointed if it's gymnastics, up all the way out and then back down. And what you'll get there is you'll get that concentric action into that pancake. So you're concentrically pulling into more hip flexion using the hip flexors, and then you are concentrically moving into more abduction, so taking away, moving the hips apart with the abductors. Okay, so that's an awesome one to develop strength in the concentric phase. So that's going to be one that you're starting to then bleed into dynamic movements, okay, like your press to handstand. But from there, we've got the next one, which is roll back reach, and this again is starting to make it a little bit more dynamic and making a position that you're then moving in and out of it. You're probably not going to get that much benefit from these if you just sort of, it's your early stages of your training. It might be a good warm up, but certainly if you've done a little bit of these exercises, done a bit of work, then you want to start to like groove the pattern and make pancake a position that you really have a bit more control over. This is going to be great. So you're basically rolling back, touching your feet to your hands if you can comfortably. Obviously only go as far as your sort of neck will comfortably allow. And then as you reach forward, you're trying to actively really pull them hips apart and then really actively pull yourself forwards into that pancake reach position. Okay, then you're rolling back and going again. And as I show in the video, to progress it, you're just going to try and straighten them legs. Okay, what that does is increase the moment arm on the legs, so it places more force required at the hip. And then obviously you're doing the same thing with them legs nice and straight. So again, that's just more of an active, moving in and out of the position and just trying to get a bit more neuromuscular control and coordination to actually apply it into more complex movements. The final thing to mention, which isn't really an exercise in itself, but it's just kind of a general statement for doing any sort of range of motion work, really, is that It's not really that useful just to have the position. You want to be able to apply it in movement. So the main reason why most people probably pancake, some people just love flexibility, but certainly for me and a lot of the people that I work with, is they want to be able to do that movement, that position, have that position so that they can perform a movement. So for example, I have people who are into martial arts, they do Muay Thai, they want to be able to kick people high, so they need that, or they want that pancake position to allow higher kicks. And then obviously more commonly you've got gymnastics, where in gymnastics you're moving through that straddle position with like a stalder press or a press to handstand, and many of the different roles and work on the different apparatus. So they need that position to be able to actively move through there. And what's important, as I'll show in the videos just here, is that you actually are utilising it. So as soon as you're starting to gain that range of motion, try and choose tasks that are actually challenging it and making it something that your brain's thinking, right, okay, there's a reason why I'm doing all this work, so I need to apply it in these specific movements, because if not, probably you'll see slower progress because you're not actually actively using it. Your brain's thinking, well, I'm not using this, so I don't really need to push adaptations towards developing it. And obviously you're going to have more coordination the more you practice the skills that you want to learn. That was just a little video to describe some of the pancake exercises that I enjoy. As I said, I mentioned the isometrics at the start, and I mentioned lifestyle factors. Really important to consider, especially if you feel like your progress is really, really slow. I think going from like really struggling to full pancake, I think it's sort of maybe a 6 to 12, if not more, month journey. I have seen people do it faster, like 3 months. Certainly if they've had it before, it might only take them a couple of weeks. But yeah, if you've come from like a field sport background, you're quite tight in your hips, I think 6 to 12 months is kind of a realistic time frame to be working towards it. Some people find they get really sore after doing this sort of training, so they may only do it once a week. Some people will adapt a lot quicker, so they may push it to 2, 3, maybe even 4, 5 times a week, but probably dropping the volume on each session a little bit there and just doing a couple of sets of each. But yeah, it's going to be very dependent on how you respond. But yeah, hopefully that helps, guys, and enjoy pancake training.